back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I am revisiting old commanders here. And I might start this as a series, actually. I did the last one about a month and a half ago, maybe, sort of on a whim. I build a lot of decks on my channel, as I've pointed out so many times. That's why my channel was created in the first place. I just build decks all the time. Hey, this sounds like a good idea. I'll try that. And I just throw these decks together and I don't really use them. So I've sort of been trying to come up with more unique ways to put all my decks on my channel. And one of the things I decided is, okay, well, here's a couple. I think there was 3 of them. Old commanders, new decks, but old commanders that I'm sort of building in a little bit of a different way. And, again, there's a lot of these newer cards that have come out recently where it's like, hey, maybe we should look at some of these old commanders because of all these cards that have come out recently that maybe have made them better. And I sort of did that as a one-off and everyone really loved it. And a lot of people said that I should do it more. So maybe I will start doing it regularly. I'm doing it again here. These are 3 more commanders. Old commander, older, oldish, again, what's old? Depends how old you are. I'm pretty old. So for me, actually, a lot of these commanders are newish, but for a lot of you guys, they're probably older commanders, underwhelming ones as well. Again, this is sort of a little bit of a replacement for my underwhelming commanders videos, because certainly there are some underwhelming commanders here, but mostly it is, okay, we've gotten a lot more support in certain themes that we never had before with these commanders, and that's mostly the case with this video in particular. I'm going to start out with Mavren Fein, Dusk Apostle, and man, when this guy first came out, mono white vampires, I don't know if we had any mono white vampires before this, but of course they did mono white vampires or white vampires, of course, in the first Ixalan set, and back then they weren't really printing every single legendary creature to be a commander. So they were doing it a little bit, but not nearly as much. So, of course, Mavren Fein, not a lot of support there. And this is, again, is one that I did on my Underwhelming Commander series. And, I tried my best. There wasn't a lot of support for it. There certainly is a lot more now. So 2 and a white Vampire Cleric, 2/2. Whenever one or more non-token vampires you control attack, create a 1/1 white Vampire creature token with lifelink. And of course, because there was so little vampire support in mono white back then, I mostly had to do kind of a Voltron strategy because there wasn't really... maybe there's 2 or 3 other mono white vampires that I could put in the deck. So I built it so that my commander could very easily... I did... give my commander flying and stuff like that. It was almost a Voltron strategy, so I got attack with my commander a lot more. And obviously, we have a lot more support now. The big one, of course, is we got a new Ixalan set, right? We got Lost Caverns of Ixalan last year, which, of course, had a lot more mono-white vampires. So it was very easy to just shoehorn some of those in the deck, like Sanguine Evangelist. 2 and a white Vampire Cleric, 2/1, has Battle Cry, which is pretty good, of course, when you're attacking those 1/1 creatures. When it enters the battlefield or dies, create a 1/1 black bat creature token flying. Sure, why not? Charismatic Conqueror is a fantastic one. And again, this is one that you could put in pretty much any deck and it's going to put in tons of work, but phenomenal fit here, obviously, right? 1 and a white Vampire Soldier, 2/2 with Vigilance. Whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. If they don't, create a 1/1 white Vampire creature token with lifelink. Obviously, that's very much going to fit the theme of what we're doing. We are gaining life a little bit, so I threw Alendis Hierophant in here as well, right? We do have lifelink on our vampire tokens that we are making. So obviously, we can do the life gain thing. I did the life gain thing a little bit in the first version. I did it here as well. I also have Well of Lost Dreams in the deck for that reason. If you're wondering why Well of Lost Dreams is in the deck, well, because I can throw a vampire token at somebody if I want to draw cards, and if the vampire token dies, who cares? I've now gained 1 life. I can pay 1 and draw a card with my Well of Lost Dreams, right? It just becomes card draw option. Redemption Choir, pretty fantastic fit here again from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, return target permanent card mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And of course, our commander is 3 mana value or less, so that's pretty great. Our commander is also a 2 power, and the tokens we are making are a 1 power, and this guy is a 3 power. So that alone fulfills the 3 different powers that we need to get this ability. So pretty fantastic fit, I think. Benny Brax, right? This guy's in the deck as well. We're not just doing Vampire Tribal here. We're also making tokens like crazy. This guy wasn't available when I made this deck. Now it is at the beginning of your end step. We've created a token this turn, we draw a card. That's going to be almost a guarantee on every one of our turns. Cassie's Welcome, also another fantastic draw option in this deck. Of course, every time we make one of those tokens, or any other creature that is mana value 3 or less entering the battlefield, we get to draw a card. So we got a lot more great card draw options for this deck as well, which is something that, again, originally it was a little lacking in that department. We can also very easily protect our team with a clever concealment. Of course, Convoke works great when you're making lots of token creatures. Those 1/1 tokens are not super threatening, but they can be used for other things, like convoking a clever concealment to have all of our non-land permanents phase out in response to a board wipe, right? Everything comes to dust is also a pretty good fit here as well. 7 white sorcery, but of course, again, has Convoke. It's not entirely impossible that we could cast this for free if we have 10 creatures in play. It is possible. We'll have to pay a little bit for it maybe, but exile all creatures except for those that share a creature type with a creature that convoke this spell, and artifacts and enchantments. So obviously vampires, right? I guess if our opponents are playing Vampire Tribal, they're going to be okay. But other than that, this is going to be a one-sided board wipe likely. So pretty great fit in the deck. And I even threw a card from Modern Horizons 3 in here, Angelic Aberration. 5 on a white Eldrazi Angel 4/4, devoid, flying, vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of creatures, each with base power or toughness 1 or less. Again, those 1/1 tokens that we're making aren't going to be super useful. They're going to be okay, but this is a great way to use them, right? Of course, they have the base power and toughness 1 or less. Then we create that many 4/4 Eldrazi Angels with flying and vigilance. So now we can turn those 1/1s into more menacing 4/4 flying angels. Pretty fantastic. So there is the new and improved Mavren Fein deck for you guys. Of course, deck list is in the description. If you're at all interested in playing essentially mono white vampires, but also a token theme, a little bit of life gain theme, right? You're doing a lot of those things in this version. Pretty good deck, I think. All right, moving on to Oviya Pashiri Sage Lifecrafter. And again, this is another commander that very underwhelming, certainly unpopular, but I think has gotten a lot better because of some of the support we have gotten in certain areas that this commander is doing. So 1 green mana, Human Artificer 1/2, one of the very few commanders out there that's actually 1 mana. Pay 2 and a green, tap, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. So that's interesting. And again, that's one of the reasons why this commander is so underwhelming, is because it's a mono green commander that's doing colorless servo artifacts. A little weird. Certainly there was not a lot of support for that back in the day. There's a little bit more now. Still not a lot, but there is certainly more. And you can pay 4 and a green and tap, create an XX colorless construct artifact creature token where X the number of creatures you control. So you can make the little guys and you can also make the big guys. So first of all, we did get some artifact support in Brothers War, like Teething Wormlet. 1 green mana worm 1/1. It has death touch as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. It's interesting. Obviously in this deck, because we're making those artifact tokens, that's not super hard to do. And whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under our control, gain 1 life. If this is the first time this ability is resolved this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Teething Wormlet. So every time we make those servo tokens or the other ones, we'll be triggering that. Sarenth Steel Seeker, also not too shabby. 1 and a green. Human Artificer Scout 1/2. When an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may reveal it and put it in your hand. If you don't put the card into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. So again, having those artifacts enter the battlefield, we'll get this trigger a lot. From Baldur's Gate, we got Halcyon Emerald Archdruid, which can now turn those not so menacing servo tokens into 4/4 bears. And we also got Jaheiri, Friend of the Forest, which obviously those tokens that we're making, and we're in the token theme, we're also in the artifact theme, we're actually in a lot of different themes here, and this can make it so that all of our servo tokens, which again, just like those lifelink vampire tokens, are going to be sitting around and are not like super fantastic, we can now use them as mana dorks with Jaheiri in play, right? Peregrine Took is also going to be a pretty good fit here from the Lord of the Rings set. 2 and a green halfling citizen 2/3. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional food token are created instead. So every time we make one of those servos or constructs, we get a food as well. And of course, food aren't particularly good, but they keep giving us other ways to use those food, and Peregrine Took has a great one. We can sacrifice 3 foods to draw a card. So all those extra foods we're making with all the extra tokens we're making, we can just sacrifice them to draw a card if we don't want to actually gain the life. Audience with Tristani, we got from Murders at Karlov Manor. 2 and a green sorcery, create an 0/1 green plant creature token, then draw cards equal to the number of differently named tokens you control. So if we just have a servo token and a construct token, that means we have have 2 tokens that are differently named, plus the plant token we are making. So when we do have other token stuff in the deck, I mean, again, we could have a food token, we could have other stuff, but if we only have the 2 from our commander plus the plant token that we are making here, this is 3 mana, draw 3 cards. That's pretty darn good, right? Pretty good rate. Tribute to the World Tree, obviously, and again, probably put this in any green deck. If you had a green deck from way back in the day, no matter what it's doing, this is probably a good fit, but obviously it's a fantastic fit here. Green, green, green enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater, otherwise put 2 counters on it. So if we are making the servo tokens, of course, they're going to get the counters, which is good. Now they're 3/3s instead of 1/1s. If we make the construct token, it's likely going to be bigger than a 3/3, so it's going to get us card draw. So win-win scenario for us there. Propagator Drone, 1 and a green Eldrazi Drone 2/2, again from Modern Horizons 3. Creature tokens you control have evolve. So again, we're in the creature token theme. Any commander from back in the day that's doing creature tokens, this might be a good fit for you, right? So now all of our creature tokens, again, whether they're the small ones or the big ones, are going to have evolve. Pretty darn good. Transmutation Font, I thought, was, again, another great fit in this deck. 5 mana artifact. Tap, create your choice of a blood token, clue token, or food token. So again, fitting all the other token themed stuff, just like the last deck, we're in several different themes here. The token theme, the artifact theme, lots of different stuff. Obviously the artifact theme is going to fit the second part. 3 mana and tap, sacrifice 3 artifact tokens with different names. So of course, again, our commander is making 2 of them. So we only need 1 more from this. We can make a blood, clue, or food. Now we have the 3 that we need. If we made a food with our Peregrine Took, now we don't need to do anything. We can just immediately skip to the second ability here and sacrifice 3 artifact tokens, search our library for an artifact card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Activate only as a sorcery. We can go get our Forsaken Monument, which again, you're not going to see that card in too many mono green decks, but it fits really nicely here, right? Because we are making colorless artifact creatures. So colorless creatures you control get +2/+2. Pretty great, right? And I also have Evolving Door in the deck because this is just such a funny fit in this deck. It's one of the few commanders that I think it's probably an auto include. I don't know how many commanders out there fit the theme of I'm making less colors than what my commander is, if you know what I mean. I'll explain the situation here and maybe you'll know what I'm talking about. It certainly fits with this commander. So 2 and a green artifact, pay 1 and tap, sacrifice a creature. Count the colors of the sacrificed creature, then search your library for a creature card with exactly that many colors +1. Exile the card, shuffle, and you may cast it. Activate only as a sorcery. So this works in the deck really, really well because, of course, we're making colorless tokens, which, of course, don't have a color. So because we're making colorless tokens and we're in a mono green deck, what Evolving Door does in this deck is I sacrifice a servo token to go search my library for any mono green creature, which, of course, we have a ton in this deck. And then I can cast it, right? I can sacrifice a servo token, go get a Rec Sage, cast it, because of course that's 0 colors +1. It's 1 color. I can go search for an Eternal Witness, right? Any utility creature I can go get with my Evolving Door. Fantastic fit in this deck. Pretty neat deck. Again, there's just a lot more support that we've gotten in recent years for this commander. I think it's gotten a lot better. Lastly, I'm cheating a little bit here. I'm doing another mono green commander that is also doing tokens. So of course, a lot of the stuff I just mentioned in the last video can fit here as well, but a lot of other stuff, right? So Sekki, Season's Guide, really interesting commander, fantastic art. Of course, Champions of Kamigawa block has some of the best art, I think, ever. 5 green, 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 Spirit 00, enters the battlefield with 8 +1/+1 counters on it. So of course, we're also in the +1/+1 counter theme here. If damage would be dealt to Sekki, Season's Guide, prevent that damage. So a replacement effect. Remove that many +1/+1 counters from Sekki, Season's Guide and create that many 1/1 colorless spirit creature tokens. So really interesting ability. You can also sacrifice 8 spirits and return Sekki, Season's Guide from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is another one that I did on my Underwhelming Commanders series. And in fact, I think this is the one that I did the real-time deck building with. I did one of my Underwhelming Commanders videos. I did a real-time deck building where I built this deck in real time. I'm quite certain this is the one. Go check out the deck I built there. I used a lot of the same things I did there, though obviously that worked. But again, we've gotten a lot more great support recently, so I've added in a lot more stuff. And it's funny how this kind of works with a lot of the things I already talked about in this video. That's why I saved it till last. Of course, we got another Kamigawa set since the last time I did this guy. And obviously the Neon Dynasty stuff will fit here like one with the Cami. 3 and a green, aura, flash, enchant creature you control. When enchanted creature or another modified creature you control dies, create X 1/1 colorless spirit creature tokens where X is the creature's power. So obviously that's fitting everything that we're doing here. Also though, I will point out that we don't have to just put this on our commander. That seems the intuitive part is let's put this on our commander, right? But we don't have to. Remember, our commander is sacrificing spirits. I do have other spirits in the deck, right? Like Jugan the Rising Star, right? So Jugan the Rising Star is a spirit that we can throw one with the Cami on and then sacrifice Jugan to get our commander back. So we can do that as well. It fits with a lot of other things we're doing in the deck, obviously, right? Kodama the West Tree, 2 and a green spirit, 3/3. And again, the spirit tribal thing is certainly a fit in this deck. Modified creatures you control have trample, and we're not doing the modified theme here hugely, but our commander now has trample because obviously our commander is a modified creature. So 8/8 trample creature seems a lot better than a 8/8 vanilla creature, right? Of course, and also when it connects, we get to go grab a basic land out of our library. That alone, I think, is worth it. Again, it is a spirit, so it fits the spirit theme, but giving our commander trample and whenever it connects, we get to go get a land seems pretty good. From Modern Horizons 3, Fangs of Colonia, 1 and a green sorcery, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, then double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. That out of counter put on it this way, and of course, it also has overload for green. Again, we're in the +1/+1 counter theme, so that's something else that you can add in if you find cards that in recent times, I mean, for me, this is sort of like a power creep situation. Of course, it's Modern Horizons 3. There already is effects that do this, but this is just a better one. This is probably a better one than most of the ones that are already existing out there, right? I already had stuff in this deck that was doubling the number of counters on stuff, and this is just a better version, so I threw it in here. Hierophant Biotitan also fits the +1/+1 counter theme. I thought this would be a neat one to throw in here as well. 10 green, Tyrannid, 12/12. But of course, as I say all the time, whenever you see a creature that costs more than like 6 or 7 mana, likely there's a cost reduction, and there is one on here. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may remove any number of +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each counter removed this way. So of course, we can just remove 5 counters from our commander, and this guy will just cost a green and a green for a 12/12 Vigilance Reach Ward 2 creature that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Pretty darn good, right? Peregrine Took. Hey, we're doing that as well, right? We are in the token creation theme here as well. Again, any +1/+1 counter stuff that has come out recently, you can add into this guy. Any Spirit Tribal stuff that came out in Neon Dynasty or modified stuff, you can add into this guy. And any token support, you can add into this guy. And Peregrine Took's probably even better here. But also, I threw Sandstorm Salvager in here. I think this works better here. You could put it in the Oviya deck as well. Again, there's so much support here just in mono green token themes that are you going to be able to fit it all? I don't know. 2 and a green, Human Artificer 1/1. When Sandstorm Salvager enters the battlefield, create a 3/3 colorless Golem artifact creature token. So maybe it does fit in Oviya because it's making an artifact token. So I guess probably it should go in there. But mostly I put it in this version because pay 2 and tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature token you control. They gain trample until end turn. It's pretty good in the Oviya too, I guess. I guess you could put it in either version. Maybe also in the Oviya version, but again, I think better here is Glaring Flesh Raker, 2 in a colorless mana, Eldrazi Drone 2/2. When you cast a colorless spell, create an 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this creature, add a colorless. It's likely we won't be using that much here, I don't think. However, we will definitely be using, and it's almost a win con, whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, Glaring Flesh Raker deals 1 damage to each opponent. That's a win con in this deck, right? And again, yes, I know, the Oviya deck is also making colorless creatures, so it does work there, but it's not making those colorless creatures with the expedience that this deck is doing it, right? This deck really can crank out those colorless spirit tokens. You can make 8 all at once. So the damage gets prevented, however you might be doing that, and then I make all those colorless tokens all at once, and 8 damage to each of my opponents. That seems amazing, right? So fantastic win con. If anyone out there has a Sekki deck, again, any of you guys that are using any of these decks already, whether they be Sekki or Oviya or Mavren Fein, I'm throwing out some ideas for you to use. Certainly these are some old commanders that I'm not saying they're bad, but certainly some of them had not a lot of support where they certainly do have a lot more support now. One of the upsides to all these cards we're getting, and I know I complain about, targeting the Commander format with all the cards they're coming out, and I still think they are doing it a bit too much. One of the upsides, though, is some of these old underwhelming Commanders now we do have a lot more support for. So there you go. The deck list for all three of these guys is in the description below. Feel free to check them out yourself or add some of these cards to the existing decks if you are already playing these Commanders. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.